Have you ever heard of this show called The Loud House? It's a series where a middle child, Lincoln Loud, has to survive in a family of 10 sisters. Yeah, that show. Well, what if I told you that I had found an unreleased, dark episode? Well, it happened to me a few days before writing this. It's a bit of a long story. I was surfing the web and came across this website of salvaged media known as Digital Fossils. It was a website that carried strange, lost pieces of media that were either phone calls, security footage, images, deleted scenes of movies, etc. I had an interest in strange, lost pieces of media, so I was curious enough to check out this website. The links were ordered as fossil, and then followed by an uppercase word or short phrase with a few numbers. These words or phrases are sometimes nonsensical and unrelated to the website entry, and sometimes they made sense. For example, fossil, DOG 807, fossil, help, 9482, and fossil, don't look, 370. Some of the entries on the website were slightly disturbing. A recording of a cat playing with a dead bird, or a news report of a kid going missing on an abandoned playground. I don't know how the website recovered these pieces of lost media, but it had almost everything that it could get its hands on. However, I stayed silent about that. I didn't work on the website anyway. However, as I scrolled down after seeing some entries, I found something that caught my eye. Fossil Loud 11. It was rather interesting. It had a word that reminded me of the ones from earlier that were randomized, but it had 11 after it. It reminded me of Lincoln Loud, the same 11-year-old boy from the show I just talked about earlier. I clicked on the link and saw the description of the entry. The description said the following: "This is a lost episode of The Loud House, which is titled as Enough is Enough. It was meant to be the finale of the 3rd season, but scrapped after its production was done. Chris will be planning another season 3 finale at the moment. However, this replacement is reasonable. The episode was lost for being too dark or disturbing for the series. If you are a fan of The Loud House, we must tell you that this is no joke. Viewer discretion is advised." I was curious. I wondered why this would be, for a show like The Loud House, to have such an episode like this. So after I downloaded it, I started the episode. When the episode begun, the usual intro played. Nothing was wrong so far. However, in the end, nobody went to the sofa to watch the TV, and they didn't act like they were there as well. So Lily's line wasn't present. Another thing that was wrong was that the ending logo was tainted with the colour of pastel red instead of orange. The website was not joking around. There was definitely something wrong with this episode. The title card had a black background with white fog flowing across the left of it, with centered text saying, "Enough is enough." The bottom bubbles below showed who made the episode as well, which was the same as the first 2 seasons. The music was a low, rumbling noise that was a little ambient, something that you might hear in a horror film or game. The episode began with the outside view of the house, as it sometimes did. The music was absent, like the beginning of Brawl in the Family. It cut to Lincoln watching the television, instead of playing video games like he usually does. He was just chilling. "Don't you just hate living with 10 sisters? Well, sometimes I do," he said while his smile turned upside down. "But on rare occasions, I go a little too far. I wish they would just leave me alone, but I can't hurt them. They're my siblings. I want to love them, but the things they do are like a setback for me." Lincoln here sounded a little more serious than normal. "Hey bro," Luann said as she appeared right next to Lincoln in the next shot. "What did the platypus say before leaving the bar? Put it on my bill." Lincoln frowned as she laughed. "Yes, Luann, pretty funny. Do you want to smell my flower?" I'm not falling for... Luan's flower sprayed water on Lincoln's face before he can even finish what he was saying. Okay, Luan, that's an... Do you want some of my banana cream pie? Luan said before smashing the pie on Lincoln's face. I wondered why the description said that this episode was too dark. Luan was making so many jokes that it made the episode more stupid than graphic. Lincoln face-palmed in dissatisfaction. Stop, Luan, you're not funny. What do you call a boy who's completely white? A flower boy. Luan laughed for a bit, but one shot later, Lincoln slid his hands off of his face, revealing his angry eyes. Enough is enough, Lincoln said furiously, as he grabbed Luan by her shoulders. Wow, nice grip, bro. Your shoulder workout at the gym. Luan laughed at her little joke. Then something happened. It took me back to the shot of Lincoln. It felt as if I was hit by a train. Just after Luan had laughed at her little joke, Lincoln slammed her head against the wall, bruising her and knocking her out. A low, ambient tune then played in the background. Lincoln gasped and stared at the crack in Luan's head, and then at her purple, bruised, unconscious body. He looked at his hands in fear. What have I done? I've never done something like this before. He looked back at Luan, but this made me feel so alive. For some reason, I've never felt this good in a while. I know just what to do. It then cut to black for 3 seconds, before transitioning to Laurie texting on her phone, possibly to Bobby. Hey Laurie, can you drive me to the comic store? Just do it yourself or get your mum, Lincoln. Laurie left the room, which I assumed was to go to the bathroom, and Lincoln looked at her phone when she left inside, glaring as he planned his next wipeout. One shot later, Laurie was seen walking into her room when, Lincoln, let go of my phone right now. Laurie was hit on the head by her phone, as it broke with the shattering of glass. Lincoln walked over to her body and looked down on her. This is for smashing my VR console, teenage brat, Lincoln said with silent anger as it cut to Laurie's lifeless body. Her phone was shattered, with bits of glass scattered across her face, being cut across some places. She was bleeding across her face on where she was cut. I was shocked to see the middle child go on such a killing spree like this. Why was this made? I thought to myself. It cut to black yet again, to change to a different scene, taking place in the backyard. Hey Lincoln, wanna wrestle? Sure, why not, Lynn? I bet I'll win this time. I knew this was going to be no wrestling match, but I kept on watching to see where this would go. As Lincoln was wrestling with Lynn, he got behind her and shortly after, cut to a close-up of Lynn's eyes. Come at me, bruh! Lynn's anticipation was cut short when she not only widened her eyes, but gagged. I knew something went wrong. The dark tune grew louder. It cut away from the close-up to show Lincoln choking his 13-year-old sister from behind. Not only that, but the animation quality changed to that of King of the Hill. It looked so shocking that it didn't look as cartoony as before. I watched as Lynn gripped her brother's hands trying to break free, but it was useless for her to escape. It cut to Lynn's point of view as she was turned around face to face with Lincoln. This is where I felt like I was going to faint. Lincoln's face looked menacing, cold, and possessed at this point. His eyes were bloodshot, his pupils were large and his skin was a tad bit darker. The animation at this point had went back to the normal style, but his face was still highly detailed. In Lincoln's pupils was the reflection of his choking sister Lynn. I watched in shock as her vision went blurry and her eyelids opened and closed. By the time she had her eyelids closed, she was done, and it was over for her. The gloomy music then stopped. The next shot went to Lincoln sitting in the dark, with Lynn's body sitting right next to him. A different low tune played. Lincoln looked at his sibling's body, with a pleasured look on his face. After 30 seconds, he spoke. "Sleep tight, Lynn. You're free." I got chills as he said those words. Lincoln had snapped, and he was no longer the man with a plan. He was now a corrupt soul. "I wonder who's next for the axe," he wondered to himself as he looked up with a planning smile. Thoughts came to him. The video suddenly turned black and white. Lincoln pulled Lenny closer to him with a pair of scissors in his hand, and glared at Lola with a bat in his hand. He was seen smashing Luna's guitar on her face, and about to set Lucy on fire. It cut to black afterwards. A line of white uppercase text, saying, "1 week later," faded in after 5 seconds. It was clear that 1 week had passed. It was nighttime again, and when the text and the black screen faded out, Lincoln was staring at the bodies of his now dead sisters, which were under his bed. To name a few of their fates, Lily choked on what I assumed to be a small toy. Lola was cut in the face multiple times, but I am not going to get into the rest of the sisters though. My job is done. All I need is one more. But who is it? He said, looking around. Yes, it must be me. There is something that I must do, Lincoln said as he looked down, as it cut to black for 10 seconds. Lincoln was now seen hanging from the ceiling, his back turned against the camera. I felt bewildered. All of the Loud siblings are dead, all because Lincoln had snapped, and it all built up to this very moment. Lincoln had to kill himself in order to join his sisters. Well, not all of her sisters. Just after a few silent seconds, Luann slowly got out of Lincoln's bed and panted heavily. It was a relief that she didn't die. Like I said way earlier, she was knocked out, not dead. Her wounds were still present, and she was a bit pale and a bit more blood was dripping down her face, but not entirely. She looked at Lincoln and back at her sisters, which were now lifeless corpses. This is no joke, Luann said softly, as she witnessed her first mass murder. She stood for a moment before limping outside, possibly to tell her parents what was happening. Afterward, the cameras panned slowly towards Lincoln's hanging body. Then it cut to a black room with Luann crying. Then she grabbed a needle and stabbed her eye out with the needle. She then grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed herself in the stomach. Blood was flying everywhere. Then Luann fell to the ground. It faded to black, indicating that the episode was over. The credits had an eerie, ambient tune, and the background was the same white fog from the title card black background and moving left, but it lasted longer. As the credits stopped, the screen went to black, and an echoing high tune rang for about 12 seconds. It gave me the willies. Afterward, the episode was finally over. Questions still rang through my head. Why was this made? What happened that led Chris Savino, the creator of the show, to make this? This episode had to have something to it. I just knew it had to. I tried doing some research on this certain episode, but nothing was found on this specific episode. I went to bed after spending 25 minutes of useless research, because no other website had anything of this episode. I still had some nightmares of that episode. Lincoln standing there with his cold, angry, bloodshot eyes and overly detailed face. He did nothing wrong. He just watched me as I slept. I always turned on my lights after those nightmares had happened. I didn't want him strangling me against the wall. Whatever he could do to end my life. I never went back to Digital Fossils for a week because of that episode. That didn't mean that I was done with it though. I just hoped I would eventually find some info about this episode. Who suggested the idea for this episode? However, here was the real question. How did they get away with making such an abysmal episode? And that, my dorks, was The Loud House. Enough is enough. Written by I don't know who. My thoughts on this story? Hot diggity dog, this story is a pile of rubbish, in British terms. This story just had every single cliche in it. I didn't enjoy the story one bit, to be completely honest. It was kind of predictable by the title, Enough is Enough. And of course there has to be a mass murder with blood and other descriptions of how the characters died. The way they found this episode on a sketchy, random website that they found was also done to death. Not to mention that this is kind of wrong. Let's think about it. Chris Savino was fired while season 2 was in production. This, however, was claiming that it was going to be the finale of the 3rd season. But how can Chris Savino help make this 3rd season episode if he's fired during the 2nd season? The answer is he can't. So this episode wouldn't exist, nor can it logically exist. At least the story didn't do hyper-realistic or photorealistic. I can give it slight props for that. This is probably the most famous Loud House creepypasta that there is, but to be fair, I don't think I've seen many Loud House stories. This is the one that's been recommended to me a lot, and a lot of people know this one. If you say the Loud House creepypasta, they'll immediately think of Enough is Enough. Is it the worst story I've seen? No, nowhere near. I still think Play With Me Sally and Sweet Apple Massacre are worse than this. But it's still not enjoyable. Squidward's suicide easily trumps this story when it comes to everything. Details, overall layout, it's slightly more believable than this. I enjoyed Dead Bart more than I like this story, I'm not gonna lie. So that should be a clear indication that I'm not a fan of this creepypasta. There for definite should have been a lot more build up than just a few jokes from Luann. Why don't you have all the sisters chip in and try and torment Lincoln? And maybe with a combined effort of all of the siblings annoying him, that's when Lincoln snaps, and he attacks them one by one. That I could believe a tiny bit more, but just the fact that Luann was the sole cause of it, I'm not a fan. I don't think even Luann at her worst could trigger Lincoln this much. It would have to be all of the sisters together, maybe even the assistance of the parents themselves, to cause Lincoln to snap that hard. The grammar's okay enough, I can give it a pass on that. And once again, it didn't go necessarily too hard with the gore or the detail. It didn't make me want to throw up or anything, so I can once again give it points. But would I recommend this story? No, not really. There are a lot of better stories out there that you can read. So if I had to give Enough is Enough a final rating, I'm going to give this creepypasta a 2 out of 10. For the sheer fact that I really just did not enjoy my time with this story. But it's not the worst thing ever. It's just a really, really bad lost episode creepypasta. But there are certainly other stories that are a lot worse than this. This has been The Dark Author. If you enjoyed this creepypasta narration and you'd like to see me do some more, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, hit the bell so you're always up to date with my latest videos, and comment down below, what did you guys think of this creepypasta? Did you enjoy it a little more than I did? Or did you find it horrible like I did? I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, my darks.